History of the Aryan Race. I have told you how I would divide the subject into 4 yogas, but as the bearing of all these various yogas is the same, the goal they want to arrive at is the same. I had better begin with the philosophical portion. The Jnana Yoga. Jnana means knowledge, and before going into the principles of the Vedanta philosophy, I think it is necessary to sketch in a few words the origin and the beginning and the development, the historical portion of that system. Most of you are now familiar with the words Arya and Aryan, and many things have been written on these words. About a century ago there was an English judge in Bengal, Sir William Jones. In India, you know, there are Mohammedans and Hindus. The Hindus were the original people, and the Mohammedans came and conquered them and ruled over them for 700 years. There have been many other conquests in India, and whenever there is a new conquest, the criminal laws of the country are changed. The criminal law is always the law of the conquering nation, but the civil law remains the same. So when the English conquered India, they changed the criminal law, but the civil law remained. The judges, however, were Englishmen and did not know the language of the country in which the civil laws were written, and so they had to take the help of interpreters, lawyers of India, and so on. And when any question about Indian law arose, these scholars would be referred to. One of these judges, Sir William Jones, was a very ripe scholar, and he wanted to go to the fountainhead himself, to take up the language himself and study it, instead of relying upon these interpreters who, for instance, might be bribed to give any verdict. So he began to study the law of the Gentus. As the Hindus were called, Gentoo is probably a form of the word Gentile, used by the Portuguese and Spaniards, or heathen, as you call it now. When the judge began to translate some of the books into English, he found that it was very hard to translate him correctly into English at first hand. What was his surprise when he found that if he translated him first into Latin, and next into English, it was much easier. Then he found in translating that a large number of Sanskrit words were almost the same as in Latin. It was he who introduced the study of Sanskrit to the Europeans. Then as the Germans were rising in scholarship, as well as the French, they took up the language, and began to study it, with their tremendous power of analysis. The Germans found that there was a similarity between Sanskrit and all the European languages. Among the ancient languages, Greek was the nearest to it in resemblance. Later, it was found that there was a language called Lithuanian, spoken somewhere on the shores of the Baltic, an independent kingdom at that time and unconnected with Russia. The language of the Lithuanians is strikingly similar to Sanskrit. Some of the Lithuanian sentences are less changed from Sanskrit forms than the northern Indian languages. Thus it was found that there is an intimate connection between all the various languages spoken in Europe and the 2 Asiatic languages, Persian and Sanskrit. Many theories are built upon it as to how this connection came. Theories were built up every day, and every day smashed. There is no knowing where it is going to stop. Then came the theory that there was one race in ancient times who called themselves Aryans. They found in Sanskrit literature that there was a people who spoke Sanskrit and called themselves Aryans. And this is mentioned also in Persian literature. Thus they founded the theory that there was in ancient times a nation, a people, who called themselves Aryans and who spoke Sanskrit and lived in Central Asia. This nation, they said, broke into several branches and migrated to Europe and Persia. And wherever they went, they took their own languages. German, Greek and French are but remnants of an old tongue, and Sanskrit is the most highly developed of these languages. These are theories and have not been proved yet. They are mere conjectures and guesses. Many difficulties come in the way. For instance, how the Indians are dark and the Europeans are fair, even within the same nation speaking these languages. In England itself, there are many with yellow hair and many with black. Thus there are many questions which have not yet been settled, but this is certain. that all the nations of Europe except the Basques, the Hungarians, the Tartars and their Finns, vide complete works 8, excepting these, all the Europeans, all the northern Indians and the Persians speak branches of the same language. Vast masses of literature are existing in all these Aryan tongues, in Greek, in Latin, in modern European languages, German, English, French, in ancient Persian,